Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Anthony Taylor, and I'm going to be reading my villanelle entitled Dr. Putney, my former history instructor. Dr. Putney, my former history instructor at Howard University, educated me to a great deal of facts and knowledge about the United States history from 1865 up until 1981, when I completed the course during my sophomore year at Howard University. Dr. Putney was a senior citizen at the time when she taught at the university. I would imagine now, 2015, she's probably resting in peace with the Almighty. Under the instruction of Dr. Putney, I learned everything I needed to know about the United States at that time that I did not learn while attending high school. Dr. Putney, my former history instructor, covered every aspect of events that shaped and molded this country into a superpower. If I recall correctly, Dr. Putney explained the Reconstruction period of the United States. Dr. Putney explained how the Northerners sent some people into the South to try to change the political and cultural landscape of the South after the Civil War. There was some change, but not that much. To go into every specific detail in this poem would be too lengthy. The Reconstruction period did put some free blacks into political office to make some changes. Blacks in the South acquired a great deal of land as a result of the Reconstruction period. The Reconstruction period set the tone for the black man to gain his self-respect again and to fully access his rights as a human being after they were violated from the institution of slavery. Dr. Putney, my former history instructor, had a unique laugh about herself. I remember her always grinning and laughing after she made a point concerning the history lesson for the day. She was a strict instructor who used to say, "I'm on a mean streak." The class would infer that statement: if you do not meet her expectations on her course, you will not pass the class. Dr. Putney discussed the Spanish-American War and the U.S. involvement in that war. She stated how the United States acquired its Caribbean territories to expand its control and influence in the world. Dr. Putney was truly one of a kind instructor. She wanted us to have a complete control of the English language. Dr. Putney wanted her papers to be clear, concise, and to the point. She graded hard, very hard. She lectured about Theodore Roosevelt and the rise of capitalism and the age of corporations. I do not remember all the details, but President Theodore Roosevelt's administration put the United States on course of becoming one of the giants in the world when it came to industrialization capitalism. The United States entered an age of prosperity and money during the 1920s before the Great Depression hit the U.S. during the early 1930s. Dr. Putney, my former history instructor, informed us that the 1920s laid the foundation of the United States for the 20th century. It was during the 1920s that movies became very popular within the United States. It was the age of Rudolph Valentino, Gloria Swanson, Clara Bow, Douglas Fairbanks Sr. or Jr., I'm not sure. People of all ages went to the movies. The automobile became a less expensive commodity for Americans to buy. The more people were able to purchase automobiles, the more people traveled from one city to another city. The automobile changed the landscape of the U.S. More highways and roads were built, giving people more jobs. Radios, refrigerators, toasters, and other household items became popular. Dr. Putney put emphasis on the 1920s, otherwise known as the Roaring '20s. Dr. Putney also lectured on how the U.S. economy started to decline towards the end of the 1920s, which led to the Great Depression. Overall, I enjoyed the lectures that I heard in her class. I received information from her that I would not otherwise have received. Reading the textbook was good, but not as good as listening to Dr. Putney's lectures. Dr. Putney, my former history instructor, was a good communicator. When she spoke of various topics and issues pertaining to the United States, you were struck with awe because it sounded like she actually lived through those times. The Great Depression of the 1930s was a terrible period for the United States during that part of American history. It was reported that over 12 million people were out of work. over hundreds and hundreds of banks were closed without giving back most of the money that people had saved. Dr. Putney delivered some strong lectures pertaining to this topic. She indicated to us there were food rationing, gas rationing, and farmers were forced off their lands because they could not afford to make mortgage payments. A man by the name of Franklin Delano Roosevelt came to office during this time and made a promise to give the United States a New Deal to resolve its economic woes. Dr. Putney lectured on the New Deal that was presented to the American peoples during the 1930s when President FDR was in the office. The New Deal promised new jobs, better bank regulations, better housing, and to make the U.S. economy grow. Dr. Putney, my former history instructor, informed us that the New Deal was a light in the tunnel for the United States during the Great Depression. However, certain events in Europe were taking place which could cause another ugly chapter to take place in American history. The end results of World War I and the battle and depression that swept the Western world into hardship and despair led many European powers into turmoil and confusion. Not to go into an epic poem about history, but to give a little information about how the United States entered World War II. The rise of Nazi Party led by Adolf Hitler and the rise of fascism led aggressive powers in Europe to aim to take over the continent and the world. The argument was that people needed change to feed themselves and to give themselves jobs. Eventually, other powers in other parts of the world saw what Germany and Italy were doing in Europe. Japan, a Far East empire, was spreading its territories into the Pacific Ocean and Asia. Japan wanted a vast Asian empire like its Axis powers had a vast European empire when World War II started. According to Dr. Putney, my former history instructor, Japan wanted the Hawaiian Islands, which were in the possession of the United States during the 1940s. The United States had a powerful Navy fleet at Pearl Harbor, which was located in Hawaii. This Navy fleet represented about 30 to 50% of the United States naval power at that time. Japan, anxious to be a world power in the Pacific, anxious to have control over natural resources in that area, brought war to the United States by conducting a sneak attack at the naval forces at Pearl Harbor on December 7, 1941. President Franklin Delano Roosevelt asked Congress to declare war on the Empire of Japan. On Congress approval, the United States entered World War II. The history course taught by Dr. Putney continued to cover topics that influenced and are affecting the United States towards the latter part of the 20th century. The Korean War was discussed and the start of the Vietnam War was discussed. Dr. Putney did cover some aspects of the Civil Rights Movement. She stated that the movement was influenced by the black church and religious leaders that headed those churches. The Black Power movement of the late 1960s and early 1970s was discussed in short. One of the main topics that was discussed was the resignation of Richard Nixon and Watergate. I will not go into specific details, but Dr. Putney pointed out that nothing like Watergate ever took place in this country. There was some discussion of the space shuttle missions that began to operate during the early 1980s. Dr. Putney, my former history instructor, covered all the topics for the course very well. She added her little sweetness and personal experience to the topics that were discussed from the year 1865 through 1981 and 1982. I thank God for Dr. Putney and this course pertaining to U.S. history since 1865 up until the time I was a sophomore in college. Overall, the course was a success. I found out everything that I needed to know about the United States that I was not taught about the United States when I was in high school. By the way, for those who are interested in the grade I received from the course, the grade was a B. Thank you, and this concludes the reading of my poem, The Villanelle. Dr. Putney, my former history instructor. I hope to see you all next week on the Anthony Taylor Poetry Show.